Everybody, this is Gaynor Meilke, and this is Moving the Needle, Digital Transformation in the Accounting Profession. And super excited today, John. You and I are going to get a treat to talk with Chris Gaetano from Accounting Today. So how are you doing, John?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Gaynor. I'm looking forward to our chat with Chris. And Chris works with accounting today, as you said, and it's like one of the major resources to just stay up to date with what's going on in the accounting profession. I've been, reading the magazine for, online and in paper for many years, and it's one of my go-to resources. So looking forward to our conversation with you, Chris.
Beautiful. Me too. It's real great to be here today.
Yeah, and Chris, we were just talking before we hit record about your deep and storied past in the accounting profession. So
True.
why don't you tell us a little bit
All
about
right.
how you got
So,
to accounting today?
all right. Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I had graduated, just beginning in journalism with local journalism, right? And this is actually how a lot of journalists begin, municipal, well, at least back in my day, a lot of journalists began in the municipal beat, town council, zoning board, planning board, police beat, stuff like that. And I did that for about 4 years or so. And of course, you think to yourself, you're young, you're hungry, right? And you're like, well, I'm not going to stay in local news. I'm going to move on to somewhere else. And so then I did eventually wind up getting an email from a former colleague, and she was like, I know you've always wanted to live in the city, get a job here, and I know you've been looking to move on up. And so I work for the New York State Society of CPAs. Now, the New York Society of CPAs. And she warned, like, hey, it's not a news publication, it's a nonprofit, it's a slightly different culture, and it's going to be about accounting. And so I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. I'll work there for about a year. I'll network, and then I'll go somewhere I really want to go, right? That was around 2009 when the economy completely
Mm,
collapsed, right? And
Yeah.
before you know it, I'm like one of the few ones of my friends who are still employed. And so I'm like, yeah, I better stay right here. I am actually one of the lucky ones right now.
Yeah.
yes.
And so just through osmosis, just being in the state society, and here's the thing, I have no background necessarily in accounting. I have, never been an accountant. I
Mm,
use pretty simple software for my own taxes and things like that. I have done a cash audit once, and that was unpleasant. But overall, though, everything that I've learned was just through trial and error. I remember
mm,
I got an earful from one CPA on the phone when I referred to the industry versus the profession, and
mm,
I made sure to not make that mistake again. I humiliated myself by thinking that an auditor was roughly the same thing as a tax practitioner. I
mm,
did not make that mistake ever again. There's actually a lot of stories along similar lines where, oh, I will not make that mistake ever again.
yeah.
Now, yeah, I spent 13 years at the State Society. I've been at Accounting Today since 2022, and so I've come with a wealth of mistakes I will not make again. A lot of it came down to just really leaning in to this,
Mm,
right? And so for a long time, throughout my career, I was thinking of this almost like a temporary sort of thing.
mm,
Then eventually you turn around and you're like, you know what, Chris, look, you have to face the facts here. This is where all of your contacts are. This is your entire knowledge base.
mm.
This is your entire portfolio of work. Anyone who Googles you is going to Google accounting articles. Like it or not, Chris, you are an accounting
You
journalist right
you are
now.
here to stay.
And
And
once I actually accepted that and stopped fighting it, everything became so much simpler.
yeah.
Everything just started getting a lot easier when instead of fighting where I was and thinking I have the wrong skills, I use them. And it turns out that I didn't even realize how much the scope and sweep of the whole thing. And honestly, what I find really interesting about it, so again, having coming from no accounting experience whatsoever, right? You learn a lot of things. And at a certain point, and I found this to be true with a lot of fields, right? At a certain point, you think to yourself that you'll learn enough that the complex will become simple, right? And
Mm.
then you'll master the whole thing. What turns out, what happens is that the more you learn, the more
Yeah.
you realize you don't know. And so
Hmm.
then you learn even more, which then exposes you to all the more things
That
that
you
you
don't
don't
know.
know. And what I have found very briefly is that complexity is fractal. It
Hmm.
never ends. So
Yeah.
even I thought to myself, like back when I was at the State Society, I am not just a business writer, I am about this very specific niche
Hmm.
business. Now I've gone to accounting today. I'm the tech editor, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in a niche of a niche. And so I thought at
Yep.
first, I'm like, wow, this world, is this going to be big enough for me? Is this
Yeah.
going, but it turns out that this world has its entire other set of thought leaders, of issues, of its perennial challenges,
Yeah.
things along those lines, the way that it all changes. I have a pretty good feeling that if I went from accounting tech overall to, let's say, just tax tech or something like that, I
Yes.
would find an entire other ecosystem of an entirely different thought leaders, entire different challenges, entire different issues that come up every single year that I wouldn't have been aware of. And then even let's say it further. Let's say I will only specialize in tax tech in the construction industry, right?
Hmm.
Well, I'll probably wind up running into, again, an entire new ecosystem of people, of thoughts. And so you think it's a funnel that goes down, 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 more and
Yeah.
more narrow, but things just a cylinder. It's just a
Well,
cylinder. It doesn't get any narrower. Sometimes it gets wider. And what I have found, what I've come to accept now, is that there is never an end to complexity. There is never
well,
an end to complication. You never get to a point where you can now survey everything and
yes.
how you understand it all, because frankly, the more you understand what you don't understand.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good point, Chris. Like overall, what I love about like what you were saying, and we talked about this a little before,
Hmm.
when you think about accountants in general, like they are also doing the same thing, right? Like specializing and drilling down and drilling down and drilling down into areas that they can really leverage to
Hmm.
provide very specific services. So, like in terms of what you're saying with all of the like the niches of tech, I think that's a challenge for accounting professionals that there's
Hmm.
so much tech. So how would you recommend that they actually filter through it all and figure
Mm.
out like what to use and what not to use? And obviously what you're doing at accounting today, especially on the AI front, is helping to distill that. So how do
Hmm.
you do that and where do you go?
All right. So, I mean, I'm speaking again as a media professional,
Yeah.
not as an actual practitioner. John has probably forgotten more about running an accounting practice than I would even be able to know. So, just with that caveat, from just a guy that's talked to a lot of people, what
Hmm.
I have found from people smarter than me who have addressed this exact question is that your tech investments, the way that you approach it, and again, I have a feeling this isn't just accounting. This is just business. This is probably even just life, right? Is that you shouldn't just buy a fancy new system so you can tell all your clients, we have this fancy new system. You shouldn't be putting tech money into, say, AI just to say, hey, we're now AI enabled or something like that. Instead, your tech is going to be, from what I understand, extremely tied to your local context, right? And what I mean by that is that your tech needs to address very specific pain points, very specific processes. And we're not even talking like things are taking too long, or we need to think about how to use this data. It would be things such as, I don't know, doing outsourced CFO work for our clients, takes up a lot of time. And so we really need a dedicated APAR solution that people will be able to directly send things to us via, I don't know, email or not, API or something like that. So that way we're not stuck downloading attachments, dragging them into folders, stuff along those lines. And this gives us time to devote more staff hours to, let's say, advisory or something like that. Or even with an advisory. Let's say that you have a lot of very, very talented financial professionals, and they've got a lot of knowledge. But then let's say that you don't really have a lot of folks. And so they're like, in addition to compiling this report, you also need to figure out how to lay it out, get the artwork, things like that. That's not their job, you know? And so maybe their technology might be along the lines of putting together these reports. I mean, honestly, you can ask most Gen AI engines to put together your very standard glossy brochure report with like its, quote blocks and its pie charts and its bar graphs and things like that,
Mhm.
and honestly can probably do it a lot better than the majority of CPAs. Unless, of course, that CPA also happened to train as a graphic designer, of which I'm sure there's lots. But yeah, in both cases, there are specific things. So, like, let's say you have your CPA, they're putting together something in Photoshop. It's taking hours, and they're just like, what in the world? Why are you not staying in this box or something? Maybe they burn tons of hours doing that. And so you structure your tech around this specific problem.
Mhm.
So, and I feel like in general, specificity is really important when it
Mhm.
comes to these sorts of decisions. And sometimes you think, how specific do I need to be about this? And so I would say, as specific as you think sounds even kind of silly, and then more specific than that. Go even a
Mhm.
little bit further than what you think might be a little
Mhm.
silly to even be a bit specific on, because frankly, you're going
Yes.
to, if you, when you think very broadly, you will probably wind up missing a lot of very small details. And so getting into these nitty-gritty things, specific processes, specific problems,
Mhm.
specific pain points, stuff like that,
Yeah.
um,
So,
is
Chris,
probably how a lot of firms should do it.
as you and Gaynor were talking about, there's just, I mean, there's so many different ways in which accountants use technology, right? So I do think it's a
Absolutely.
little bit unique to the profession because, in an accounting firm, you have the tax folks, you have the audit folks, you have the advisory folks. I mean, and
Mm.
then you might have wealth management. So all those different pieces require pretty much completely different technologies. So in your role at accounting today, how do you go about making the decision of what topics to get into in your articles and such?
I mean, it's kind of a feedback sort of process. So,
Mhm.
people looking at my articles right now, they'll see there is a ton of AI related content. And a
Yeah.
lot of that came from when I just began writing about AI. It seems that this is what a lot of our audience is very interested in. And they themselves, they have questions. And let me tell you, I had questions too.
Sure.
And so I just kept on digging into these questions, and then people kept on seeming to like them. And
Mhm.
so, and again, these sorts of issues, these sorts of questions that come up, I get curious about it too. So, for example, there's the question of, well, when AI is making so many things so efficient, what becomes of the billable hour then? I'm like, ooh,
Yep.
that is an interesting question there. When AI does all of these entry level tasks so well, why would we hire an entry level person? Why not just, if we need talent, why can't we just buy it from like someone in the middle or some consultant or something like that?
Mhm.
Good question.
You,
And there's
I
lots of
want
answers.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, I really enjoy, I know you guys do a lot of like webinars. Oftentimes they're, resource providers to the profession. And I sign up for those pretty much as I can. Can't always make them, I sign up for them, but I can't always, something else may come
Hmm.
up. But I just think it's a good way for the people, on the podcast today. It's a good way to learn because, sure, if there's a vendor, they're going to be a little bit, maybe a little salesy, but they know the product, they know the application better than
Hmm.
anybody. And, so whether it's AI or tax, tax document organization, you name it, it is a good way, I think, to learn.
Oh yeah, no,
Mhm.
absolutely. And that's one of like many different areas because I think what's really important is having a very varied information diet.
Mhm.
I think the webinars are very important to be able to have access directly to the vendors. I think industry events where you're talking to peers and stuff like
Mhm.
that, that is absolutely very important. Sometimes it's a matter of just literally calling up other firms in your area, let's say if you're
Mhm.
vetting a new tech, and just being like, yo, do you have like any experience with this solution? They told me that it'll double our revenues in 6 months. It's like, that's really funny because it's cost us like double our revenues in 6 months. So forget those guys.
Reality check.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Because I think what's very important are reality checks because frankly, we live right now you know what? It's never been 100% of a clear arena there, but especially now with AI
Mhm.
being able to produce frankly BS at
Yeah.
industrial scales,
Mhm.
Yes.
um it is becoming so much more difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff, to know what's real
Yeah.
and what's not. And this ain't just in terms of tech. This is like our whole culture,
Yes.
you know? I mean, we
Right.
all, I think, seen videos now. We're like, is that I think that's
Right.
AI. Oh, wait, that wasn't? Oh, wow. Or something along those lines, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would go back to specificity, right? And so I'll see advertisements, right? Or I'll get press releases, or I
Mhm.
will just look at somebody's website, a vendor's website or something. Benefits, take care of routine processes, focus
Mhm.
more on high value activities.
Yeah.
And I think if you're interacting with a vendor or even just evaluating things, try to look for specifics. You know,
Mhm.
when people have confidence in something, they will want to crow about it. And I
Yeah.
think they will want to be specific about how it works. If, on the other hand, you say, what does your solution do? And it says, it helps accountants keep more money. You're like, that doesn't strike me as having a lot of confidence
Uh-huh.
in your
Mhm.
product because, or else you would probably say it helps them keep more money by doing this and
Yeah.
this. And you know, this process over here that everyone's bedeviled by, we take care of that. And then you might even ask, how? Because you know what, people make all sorts of claims. And so then
Mhm.
they might say, well, the problem is a lot of the times these processes are manual, even when there's digital. This one connects directly through API over the servers, and the client becomes self-serve. And you're like, that is interesting.
Mhm.
Then this brings
Yeah.
up the questions of how is this portal secure? How do you make, are you SOC 2 certified, stuff like that? And again, fractal complexity. You just
Yeah.
dig, drill, 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 drill. And it's not really a matter of reaching a point where there's bottom. It's reaching a point where you are satisfied, where you're like, you
I
know what?
like that.
This
Yeah.
sounds okay because you will never reach bottom. That will
Right.
never happen. Even the
Yeah.
people who make these sometimes people who make AI models don't even necessarily understand how they work, what their reasoning is, because I don't know, a weird black box effect. Sometimes I think like you have these models that lay out the reasoning. They're like, oh, well, the user wants to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, this step, this step, this step. This all comes from LLM, though, if I recall correctly. And so, how do I know that that's the
Mm.
actual step? Or maybe it was just BS or something like that. You'll have, imagine you have a student, you know, a math student in high school or something like that. Their math teacher wants them to show their work. They use the calculator and then they maybe just scribble some stuff that indicates like crossing
Yeah.
out. Oh, yeah, I totally showed my work. And we don't know if when it says these are the steps I'm going through, I would like some assurance that these indeed are the steps they're going through. The way to get independent verification that what they're saying is what they're saying, but I don't know if that's possible or if people would necessarily want to sell a product
Yeah.
where that's possible. That
I
gives up
do
a lot of
believe,
control.
yeah, I do believe that actually presents a great opportunity for CPAs, particularly the
Hmm.
auditors in
Oh
the
yeah.
profession,
Mhm.
because I think that's going to be a whole new arena is, how do you become that third party
Hmm.
verifier?
Verification. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be easy. Very few people in our profession are currently trained to go down that path, but I do think it's a future opportunity for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've been thinking about this over the past year or two. And again, just like getting out of even just the financial information, just broadly, the CPA profession is very well positioned in this world of we don't even know necessarily what's real because the purpose of the CPA at its most ideal and its most like refined is we are the ones that can actually figure out what the hell the truth is. You have a merger coming up, you know? One person is saying, "Oh yeah, we're like worth so much money. You're gonna have to pay
Mhm.
so much money." Another person's like, "We have so little money. We can't really pay." You go through the numbers, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
What is the actual thing? Is maybe what are there's statements that are like value statements, you know, a good company, a healthy company. The CPA says, regardless of what you call a good company, a healthy company, well-run company, look, here's the cash flow.
Right.
That cannot,
It
well,
does not
if
lie.
it
The
does
cash
lie,
flow
then you're in
does
real
not.
trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so in the same sense where so many things like receipts even nowadays aren't any more proof. It's
Yeah.
pathetically simple for an image generator to create a very realistic looking
Yeah.
receipt. It's onto the CPA, I think, to be, is this real? Is this
Yeah.
info? And you know what? I remember when those receipts came out, the CPA community did kind of freak out, but quickly they were like, okay, what do we
Mm.
do about this?
Uh,
Immediately, I
Yeah.
noticed going into problem solving mode, being just like, okay, we clearly can't trust like receipts anymore. Now, what do we do? Maybe some people suggested front loading expenses, so
Mm.
that way you don't even have to bother with like reimbursements. Other people said, get rid of documentary evidence at all, and we're just going to read directly from bank feeds from now on.
Mm.
There's been a lot of answers to this. Give it some years and we'll find out which ones shake out, I
yeah.
suppose. But then
So,
again, fraud's always an arms race too.
yeah. So in terms of, you mentioned just now the future and like looking forward for the accounting
Mhm.
profession, not necessarily even based on technology, but I mean, where do you see the profession going? You live and breathe
Uh,
a lot of different viewpoints all day long. Like what do you think are like the top five things that we should all be thinking about?
okay. So let me think. Five, eh? Well, I think
Or
first of
three.
all, what we should be just generally, I think that where the profession is going to be going is, well, first of all, I don't really necessarily have a crystal ball. I'm just going to be like reading something out of like glass or something like that. So do that, like take that with what you will.
Yeah, no,
I would probably
we
say
will
that
not hold you accountable. We won't make you accountable for it.
one possibility that I think about is almost a bifurcated profession, right? And so you have these huge mega firms that can afford to
Mhm.
drop millions and millions of dollars on proprietary AI systems. And you know what? Even before the big age of AI, I mean, I
Mhm.
remember like talking to big four practitioners about their very sophisticated AI systems as early as like 2016, 2017, or something like that,
Mhm.
versus your much smaller firms who I will say AI allows them to punch well above their weight. It's true. They can take on a
Mm.
number of clients that they had not only been able to dream about before. They have access to analytical capabilities, but these will be largely through commercially available models. And when everyone has the same one, a lot of these AI models, I feel like it's sort of like if you were the only country in the world with airplanes or something, you would be able to dominate everything. But everyone's got airplanes now. And
Mm.
so it all kind of seems to come out in the wash. And meanwhile, while most people have airplanes, you have a couple of really, really rich countries that have like B-2 stealth bombers or something like that that would eat up like 500% of your GDP, you
Mm.
know? And so the smaller firms, their capacities jumped. Bigger firms jumped a lot, I would say, too. That is one possibility. The other possibility is a flattening, almost the exact opposite, right? Maybe, and again, this is all just crystal ball-y stuff, but like maybe the quality of models on a commercial level will grow to a point where I don't know, maybe it could rival what like the huge big fours, the mega firms actually do. In which case, it will be a lot less useful to be big.
Mm.
Economy of scales won't really be as big of a deal if your average sole practitioner has access to something that is as sophisticated as something that PwC dropped $5 million on or something like that.
Mm.
You got it for 5,000.
Yeah, my opinion is that as a profession, the firms, we're headed towards a period where it's all about the small firms. I think
Mhm,
that because there's so much change going on, the big firms,
Mm.
even though they have the money to invest in research and development, it just can't change as fast, right? Because you
mhm,
got these
Yeah.
tens of thousands of staff members, and it's hard to get people to change.
mhm,
And as you said, the AI is like lets them punch above their weight now. And so I think and we're in this whole age of entrepreneurs. So the
mhm.
young kids, folks coming out of college, I think a lot of them really want to just start their own business, and
Yeah.
never been a better time to do that. So I think we're going to see a lot more small firms over the next 5, 10 years for sure.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. I think that like what we'll wind up seeing in terms of bifurcation will just be the kinds of engagements that
Yeah.
smaller and again, there's always been this. You don't have your sole practitioner taking on a multinational SEC client,
Right.
mostly. Um, and so I think that we will wind up seeing well, first of all, the small practitioners, I think we will wind up seeing a lot more advisory Because here's the other thing too, is that even these small practitioners will have to provide something that, let's say, a lot of traditional business software now seems to offer, right?
Right.
Before you used to need to hire your CPA to get those glossy quarterly reports all about your business. Now it comes as a native capacity on a lot of platforms, right?
Right.
And so the CPA is going to need to offer something beyond just the execution of the task, you know? And frankly, this has always been a relationship sort of business, you know?
Mhm.
And the actual glossy report, that's just almost the receipt that stands in for the years of relationship building that
Hmm.
you've already put in, you know? That same glossy report from somebody that does not know the client at all won't be, it'll look nice. You know,
Right.
it'll have like good stock photos and stuff like that, but it won't quite have the same intimacy. You know, it won't quite have the same punch that a CPA that you've known and had a relationship with for a long time would. Now, then you get to the huge firms that have these very, very sophisticated systems. They'll be doing all sorts of very complex modeling, I'm sure. They'll be
Yeah.
working with like governments and like the major megacorps that will become countries unto themselves or something like that, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but you also brought up a really good example, a really good point about entrepreneurship. What I think is interesting is that the barrier for entry to start your firm has gotten much lower as a
Yeah.
result, you
Mhm.
know? The amount of time, the amount of skills, the amount of people that you would need has shrunk
Mhm.
dramatically. I
Yes.
do have to wonder to myself whether this will mean fewer accountants. You don't need as Let's even take an audit, right? Back in the 1990s, if you were going to do an audit of someone, you would send an army of first years to the warehouse to pull out boxes, go through receipts, stuff like that. Now it's five people on a laptop. Maybe it'll be one person in a laptop. And so
Yeah.
maybe instead of five people, you do five engagements and stuff like that. But then I also wonder how much demand for these services can there really be? The same goes for everyone abandoning compliance and going into advisory. That's great. Advisory is worth a lot more than compliance now. What happens when every CPA firm
Yeah.
starts offering that? The supply of business
Yeah.
advice will go up dramatically. I don't know if demand will necessarily go apace. It might be sort of similar after the great financial crisis. A lot of people thought to themselves, I'll go to law school and wait this
Mhm.
out. The country was flooded with lawyers, and now average compensation of lawyers wound up paradoxically dropping as a
Yeah.
result.
And
So who
I
knows?
think I think we're seeing this now already with the large firms, right? With all these
Hmm.
mergers and acquisitions, a lot of the advisors and consultants to those large firms are like, oh, gosh, I don't have as many opportunities to pursue
Hmm.
now because they're all rolling up. So at the big firm, we're seeing that already.
Oh yeah, for sure. And even with the advice too, I also have to wonder how useful these insights that AI generates will become once everyone starts getting the same ones. I think that a lot
Yeah.
of advice
That's
depends upon information asymmetry in
Yeah.
order to be effective. It's sort of like when you're the only one that knows that this road always has traffic and this road is always clear, you
yeah.
can reroute and get to work faster. Then they announce on the radio, Route 9 has lots of traffic, but
That's
Route
right.
1 is totally clear. Route 1 is ruined now.
Yes.
So
And the-
everyone is going to be getting all of this advice. And I gotta wonder what happens when everyone starts doing this at once. I have
well,
no idea.
you
We'll
know
see.
what though? I think that's where where we started the conversation about niching is
Hmm.
really important still because
Yeah.
it's like you can be the CPA that knows inside and out, like somebody, I'll use restaurants for an
Yep.
example. You know, here's exactly what you need to do to start your restaurant. We've seen this like 1,000
Hmm.
times. Like we've got you locked down. So you're actually the accountant can truly be the business advisor
Hmm.
helping the businesses in every stage as opposed to just depending on
Hmm.
the data and insights from the reports, right? Like
Oh, for sure.
you got to up level like the skill to its highest form as opposed to just here we're going to give you the like you said the McDonald's report that everybody else
Hmm.
is pulling out of AI.
McDonald's, I like that. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. It's a good
Yeah.
one.
Would you like fries with that?
Exactly. Like I do think that there's something we're going to be entering a very weird era as a
Yes.
result of all this. And I think that like when it comes to um a lot of AI. So one thing I've been thinking about is why it is that AI is all so many people can talk about, and yet few have realized financial ROI from
Mm.
it. And when you ask them, like, what your ROI has been, they'll talk about indirect, which, yeah, indirect, that's not nothing. More time is not nothing. Cheaper processes is not nothing. But at the same time, a lot of these companies, they're like, yeah, but is this bringing us more money? And they're not entirely sure. And I think part of this, and again, this is not an issue that came with just AI. It's kind of just thrown gasoline on the fire or something like that. But this idea broadly that a profession is nothing more than the discrete tasks
Mm.
that it performs, right? And so things accountants do, such as fill out a return, to like things that like to calculate a cost basis or something along those lines. But it's more than these discrete tasks. There's also business development. There's relationships.
Mm.
There's keeping clients informed. There's the emotional labor of saying, oh, your business is like broke. Sorry, you know?
Mhm.
Um, I think so. I wish I could remember what the name of this study was. Organizational physics. I'm like got too many tabs open at all times. I'm a
Don't we
tab
all?
killer.
But
Yes. So there was a study, Workflows and Automation, by a guy, Philip Trammell.
okay.
I'm really interested in this paper, and I talked about how um each individual task that any profession does informs all the other ones. When we
Hmm.
break tasks into discrete areas where its only responsibility is that task, it
Mm.
loses out on the network effects of
Mm.
all these tasks being done by a person. So in the paper, it
Yeah.
talked about how an economist, this is an economics paper, an economist needs to both understand data, and explain data.
Hmm.
To understand the data makes you better at explaining the data. To
Yes.
explain the data makes you better at understanding the data because you have to think about how it's phrased, how
Yeah.
explain all of this, right? And so if you separate these tasks, then they both would suffer, you
Hmm.
know? And so people, I think, may not necessarily realize how tasks that don't necessarily seem to be related are linked. And what's
Mm.
more is that by linking them in the same person's mind, they can apply insights from one task to the other to the other to the other,
Yeah.
and thereby make all of the tasks more efficient. And yet, if you only had a person, meanwhile, let's say that in a tax thing, you had a person whose sole job, only job, was to fill out W-2s. That
Mm.
is all they do. They
Yeah.
don't understand anything else about
Mm.
larger tax law. They don't understand the client.
Mm.
They don't understand the company the client works for.
Mm.
All they do is just a series of tasks. Fill this box, find this
Yeah.
data, put this in. And so maybe they'll get incredibly good at that task, but ask them to understand
Yeah.
taxes, and they'll maybe be able to speak forever about that one tiny area,
Yeah.
but they won't have a holistic understanding. And so I think what's lost in
Mm.
all of this task individual, like we lose this holistic understanding of
Mm.
our entire work. Taking it
Yeah.
out of accounting, let's even talk about, so my sister is a teacher, right? And you have a lot of people who are like, they're only see teachers when their kids are at school, when they're coming to pick them up.
Mm.
And so I've heard people say they only work for like
Yeah.
12 hours a day. And like that does not count all the unpaid prep work. That does not
Yeah.
count
Meeting.
all of the after work of meeting with teachers, meetings, professional enrichment. This does not count even classroom management. So people think that teaching is nothing but the imparting of information, but there's a huge classroom management aspect as well. Like there's that one person that never answers anything. Are they afraid? Are they shy? Did they not do the reading? There's that guy, that was me in school, who raises his hand at everything. We can't call on this guy every single time. And
Right.
these are decisions that are formed holistically from all of these tasks that the teacher understands from the students of that
Mm.
year. And any one of them taken in isolation, removed from this larger context, will likely not be done as well. And
Yeah.
so with accounting, we can see how this applies. We can see how it applies, let's say, with medicine. If all you do as a medical professional is medical coding and you've never diagnosed anyone, then,
Right.
like you don't understand the body as a holistic system.
Yeah.
And so I think that this sort of isolation from things is what
Mhm.
keeps tasks from being it makes them technically competent, technically well, but
Yeah.
doesn't quite get that secret sauce that a lot of
I
people are looking for. And I think for that, you need a broad, holistic understanding. Can AI replicate that? Ask me next year. This
yeah.
thing
Yeah.
advances super fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for now, I
Well,
think this is a theory that I've been kind of chewing on in my
yeah.
head. And I don't know, like I've been seeing more and more sort of evidence for this kind of thing. And I do have to wonder whether we are shooting ourselves in the foot by hyper specializing so much. I mean, as Heinlein said, specialization is for insects. You know, you need to be like people need to be able to do many things in the course of their lives
Yeah.
to
When
feel fulfilled and be good at it.
I also think about just what you were saying on the isolation of knowledge and I guess competence. Because if you're sitting across, even on Zoom, from your client, and they ask you something about their business, and you're like, I don't know, because I've not like, that's not my job, right? Like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
so it is still it's not a set it and forget it solution to just plug
Hmm.
in all of this technology and then like pull up the reports, right? And that's, to your
Hmm.
point about relationships and wanting to have you can't build trust on, bits and pieces. You've got to have
Hmm.
that cohesive understanding, but also desire
For
to
sure.
help people, right? And so yeah, well, fascinating. I think you need to write a book, Chris. Like you need to like take all of these theories and like explore them all. So maybe you're already doing that, but
I write here and
I'm
there for
sure.
myself. Nothing really like I'm gonna say 90% of the words I have typed have been about accounting.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
Mhm.
John, do you have any other questions for Chris?
No, it's been very insightful to hear your thoughts, Chris, about I think that point you were just making
Mhm.
is really very valid, and
Yeah,
that message needs to get out more. And we'll
yeah,
definitely look forward to continuing to read your articles in accounting today. I always
yeah,
enjoy them, like I said earlier. So
Thank you so much.
look
Really
forward to
appreciate
those.
it.
You bet.
yeah. So where can people find your writing? Obviously on accounting today,
Yep.
and
I mean, there you can find me on Accounting Today. I post a lot of stuff over on LinkedIn,
okay.
and yeah, like various pseudonyms and stuff like that for like fiction. I do write short fiction stuff like
Oh,
that.
cool.
Trying to get some like novels published, but that's a
Yeah.
whole thing there.
You are a
And
writer through and
mhm,
through, a journalist, and honestly, a visionary.
it
Like,
is both work and recreation.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
feel I feel very fortunate that I am one of really there's not a lot of people able to make all of their income from writing.
yes,
Right.
When I told my parents I wanted to be a writer, certain images do appear, but I will say that from my parents, I learned also just the importance of having a craft, a
yes,
trade as
yeah.
well. And so yeah, I am very fortunate that I get to turn words into food.
Yes, you do.
There you
And
go.
I think also, you're more than a writer, you are a thought leader. You're thinking of you're doing what we were just talking about. It's not just getting the words out into a format people can read. You're synthesizing it all for us. And that's super important because, as we've said, like AI can make this
Mhm.
expansive trove of info, but who do we trust to give it to us? And I would say that you're definitely one of the trusted voices in the
Aw.
profession. So I
Well, I
appreciate
did
you.
write for the Trusted Professional for 13 years.
Yeah,
So I will also say that
amazing.
a hint that I'm trying to distribute as well is when you're asking any AI model for advice, right?
Mhm.
And you think it's giving you a very sound sort of hint or something like that, and you like what it's saying, ask it next to generate a counter argument for what it just said, drawing upon everything it knows about you.
Mhm.
And so you'll be able to see Just the
Right.
way that it's able to tell you exactly what you want to hear. Whether it's what you need to hear can sometimes be iffy. And so it's important to be able to approach things skeptically. And so sometimes making AI skeptical of itself can help in that regard.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
Advice.
Very good. All right. Well,
All
thank you
righty.
so much, Chris. I really appreciate you
Of
taking
course,
the
of
time to
course.
talk to us.
Yeah, thanks
And
for joining us, Chris.
I had a good time, for sure.
yeah, well, you'll
So,
always be welcome to come back. And I know why you and I are such good pen pals over email because
oh
it's
yeah, for sure. You are
so
super active. I love that.
yeah, well, so are you, and so is John. So we're,
Mhm.
in our own small way trying to,
The
move
super
the
active
needle
folks.
and bring it all forward. So I'm sure that we'll be speaking again soon, and I appreciate it.